With our introductions out of the way, let's move on to sprint planning. Specifically, let's answer the question of what can we deliver as a product increment as a result of this sprint. On cue, Dave steps to the front of the room and greets the team. Hello everyone. I'd like to start off by introducing the business objective for this sprint. As you all know, in recent years we've come under a lot of pressure from smaller competitors who have been releasing competing financial analysis products into the market. Now, while these products are not near as feature-rich as our own, our competitors' ability to introduce and ship new features in direct response to customer feedback has taken its toll. Therefore, as our first product increment using the Scrum framework, we'd like to introduce a new feature set that has been frequently requested by our own customers. This feature set is the ability to provide various exports of our profit and loss report so it can be more easily imported into other off-the-shelf tax accounting software. We hope that adding the ability to easily export this data from our product will not only deepen our integration with our partners, but will also alleviate some of our customers' fears about potential lock-in. To meet this objective, I've worked with Louise to define a product backlog that will specify the items necessary to add this feature to our product. After Dave says this, Alan steps back to the front of the room to explain exactly what a product backlog is to the team. A product backlog is one of the artifacts of the Scrum framework, but don't let the word artifact fool you. The product backlog is actually a living document that's constantly evolving to represent the product owner's current vision for the product. It contains all items necessary for the team to meet that vision, such as user stories, current defects, or tasks. Although there are many types of items that can appear in the product backlog, when working with the Scrum framework, we refer to each of these items generally as a product backlog item. You'll see that each product backlog item has all of the information necessary for you to understand its intent. In particular, each item that Dave has added to the backlog contains a short description that captures its intent and a rough estimate. Let's talk more about the individual product backlog items. We'll start with a description. Now, I know what you're thinking. Most of these items have only a single line of text. They haven't captured nearly enough detail for us to build from. But that's actually intentional. Rather than thinking of each item as a complete requirements document, instead, think of each item as a placeholder for a conversation. The details of each item should remain malleable depending on any number of factors, such as how it contributes to the sprint goal, how much effort both Dave and you as a development team are willing to invest in it, or what the capabilities and limitations of our current technology platform are. Rather than try to predict and capture all this information up front, Agile approaches encourage the product owner and the development team to collaborate to discover the most effective way to meet the goal specified on each card. Next, let's talk about the estimate. Now, these estimates are only Dave and Louise's ballpark estimates based on how large or small similar items have turned out to be in the past. I want to be clear that these are used only for rough planning purposes, and in no way should they be construed as a commitment by the development team. Scrum is unequivocal in its belief that those who will actually be doing the work are those who estimate the work. We've used these rough estimates for planning, but we'll drop them at the beginning of the sprint planning session and replace them fresh with the estimates that the team assigns today. And finally, I want to explain the letter in the top right corner of the backlog item. The Scrum framework requires that each product backlog item be assigned a value, which can be useful when prioritizing when the team should invest in delivering that item and help illustrate the business value that's being created by the development team. Now, there is no prescribed way of measuring this value, but what I've seen work well in the past is to simply assign each item a letter value of A, B, or C. A-level items are those items that are critical to the product's success. Maybe they set the product apart in the marketplace or close some longer-term gap in strategy. While C-level items are those items that, while they may add incremental value, aren't near as critical as the A-level items. Maybe these items further enhance the usability of a feature which is already performing well, or they satisfy a certain request from a specific customer. As a good rule of thumb, while these items may add value, it's unlikely that they would warrant anything more than a footnote in your latest round of release notes. And lastly, B-level items are those items that fall somewhere in the middle between A-level and C-level items. And, of course, it should go without saying that if an item doesn't add any value, then we don't even include it in the product backlog, since there would be nothing to be gained from the investment necessary to bring it to market. We'll start with this scale to measure value for now, but we can always change it later if we discover a better way to do so. In the end, what's important is not how value is measured, but rather that the team is measuring it in some way that can facilitate a discussion about whether or not the team is always working on the highest value work available. And lastly, I'd like to point out that the ordering of the product backlog is very intentional. Product backlogs are ordered by priority with the highest priority items at the top. Now, priority can be a function of many different factors, such as potential business value to the organization, risk of delivery, or even technical necessity in the case of an item that simply must be completed so higher value items can then be worked on. Regardless of how the product owner has chosen to prioritize the product backlog, you should expect that items higher in the backlog will be more refined than those items lower in the backlog. Product owners are very busy people, and Dave is no different. As a result of this, he'll focus his energy on the items that he knows the team will be picking up next, and leaving the rest of the items relatively less defined until we get closer to them. The advantage of this is that since the product backlog is a living artifact, it will more accurately represent that we know less about the items in the bottom of the backlog than those items closer to the top. On the other hand, if Dave were to invest a significant amount of time refining these items, and not only would they likely be based on inaccurate assumptions, but due to the time he's already invested, he may find himself resistant to update these items to reflect the most accurate goals of the business. Keeping these lower ranked items relatively more vague than the higher ranked items is more transparent about our true state of understanding of these items, and encourages us to continue to refine these items as more accurate information becomes available.